Hi there, Dee. Hi, Chris. Lovely to see you. Thanks for joining us on our webinar today. Just going to wait for a few more of our registered attendees to jump on the call, and then we'll get started in the next 30 seconds or so. So make sure you've got a glass of water, whatever you need to make yourself comfortable, and we'll begin the webinar in just a couple of seconds. Hi Ollie, hi Thomas, it's really nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. We're just going to wait another couple of seconds for some of the other people that have registered already to join us, and then we'll begin. Okay, great. So we're starting to fill up the room, and just a couple of bits of housekeeping before we jump in. We will be recording today and sharing the webinar with those people that haven't been able to join us. So if there are any specific questions that you're wanting to ask that might relate to your business and might include some confidential information or something that you wouldn't want to have recorded and shared, please just drop us a private note into the Q&As. And we can make sure that we can jump on a call with you afterwards, or we can talk about that outside of the public arena. But do feel free to use the Q&As if you've got anything that you want to ask about, and we can always work around that. So what we're going to do is get started now. I'm just going to let a couple of other people in. Fantastic, lovely to see you, Julia. I'm really glad you've been able to join us. And we'll start the recording in just a moment. I'm going to hand over to Richard now so he can begin the webinar.
Thank you, Tori. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard. I'm one of the accountants at Panthera, and I'll be your moderator today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the webinar environment or are new to Zoom, there are a few settings that we'll go through. At the bottom left of your screen, you'll have an audio settings button, which you can use to select and test your speakers. Towards the middle, there's a Q&A button. If you have any questions, feel free to write them in there, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the webinar. At the bottom right, there's a red leave meeting button. If you click this, you'll be able to leave the meeting if you need to at any time. When you do leave the meeting, you'll be taken to a survey page. Please can I ask you complete this so that we can ensure that we offer the highest value from our webinars. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Vicky Filden, Practice Accountant, and Tori Wag, Director, both from the Panthera team. Welcome, Vicky and Tori.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. And good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for giving up your time to come and join us this afternoon. I know that time is precious and that some of you will be juggling all sorts of hats at the moment, but we're confident that you and your business will really benefit from drawing up a recovery plan, and our aim today is to help you get started. So our thought of the day, I think you'll all agree that we're navigating very rough seas at the moment, and this African proverb, smooth seas don't make skillful sailors, reiterates that by now often heard phrase, we'll come out of this, but with a bit of work and planning, we can not only come out of this, but we can emerge much stronger and better prepared. Let's have a quick run through of the agenda. So firstly, we're going to look at closing the disconnect. Then we'll move on to the need to reinvent, your budget, personal and business, opportunities, vulnerabilities, and critical challenges. Identifying managing risks, goals and actions, pulling everything together, your next steps, our support, and finally, questions. Don't forget this webinar is being recorded, and there is a workbook that you can download if you haven't already done so. So no need to make copious notes, but please feel free to submit any questions by the Q&A panel as we go along. And we'll cover as many as possible at the end. Before we get stuck in though, I just want to throw in the usual disclaimer that we're also famous for in our industry, which is that we are not insolvency specialists here. There are very strict rules and regulations around solvency, some of which have been amended to account for the impacts of COVID-19. If your business is unable to continue to trade as a result of solvency or bank finance issues, However, we will of course refer you to suitably qualified specialists. So that's the small print out of the way. We can get started. Closing the disconnect. Some of you are probably wondering what on earth we're talking about, but I just wanted to share some thoughts about how we can stay better connected at this time. And I'm not talking about how we can be better connected with technology, with things like these webinars or online meetings, though these are important. I'm coming from the perspective of how we can work together more effectively now and in the future, where your expertise can be combined with ours to create outcomes that wouldn't be possible by working alone. In our view, it's never been more important to create and connect with a team of people who can help you at this time. People like your banker, your legal and HR advisors, your accountants, bookkeepers, so that together you can come up with a far better plan. At Panthera, our core purpose is to help businesses to thrive. Hence why we are running a seminar, which we hope will just be the beginning of how we can work even better together. Please don't be shy about asking questions when they come to mind. As I said, we'll cover as many as we can at the end. So now we're going to turn to the need to re-engineer. During times of adversity, we're often forced to think outside the box, to reinvent the way we work or behave. We see 4 main opportunities for you to reinvent your business. The first opportunity is to innovate. The Oxford Dictionary defines innovation as the introduction of new things, ideas or ways of doing things. A great example we've seen during the COVID-19 pandemic is a company that changed from selling travel pillows to hair clippers. In this sense, innovation is doing something completely different. An example for you might be introducing a new product, line or service. The second way to reinvent is to re-engineer. The Cambridge Dictionary defines re-engineer as to change and improve the design of a product or system. In other words, use what you've already got to produce something completely different. One example of re-engineering is the Scottish beer company, Brewdog, looking at what they could make and moving from producing beer to creating their own hand sanitizer. Please note, however, this is not the same as a certain president asking if it is safe to drink disinfectant to cure coronavirus. Another example of re-engineering is the 7 Formula 1 teams who took up the NHS challenge to make ventilators. The third way to reinvent, your business is to adapt or change the way you deliver products or services. Remember the biological definition of adaptation, which is the process by which a species becomes fitted to its environment. In other words, we can take the new normal or new environment that we find ourselves in, how we can change to suit that environment better. A great example is a beauty therapy business that emailed their client base offering a free online skin consultation if they buy a product, as well as new bundles of product, including full-size products and multiple samples. This was marketed as the home facial. That business was unable to offer beauty therapy in the traditional way during lockdown, so needed to adapt to an online solution. So we know we can reinvent in 4 ways. 1, innovation, 2, re-engineering, 3, adaptation, and now number 4, to widen your lane. What we mean by widening your lane is to broaden your product or service offering. For example, the cafe who broadens their offering from lunchtime sandwiches, cakes and coffee to include new ready-made meals, boxed sweet treats, to selling wholesale ingredients and even ingredient bundles with recipes for making their signature treats. So with these 4 ideas in mind, innovation, re-engineering, adaptation or broadening your offering, what can you do in your business? This is what business recovery planning is all about, and this is where I'm going to hand over to Tori to run through what that process looks like. Thanks, Tori.
Thanks so much, Vicky. That was really helpful for you to explain that, and thank you so much to all of you guys for joining us this afternoon. We know that your time is really precious, and so I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day today to share with us to talk about this planning. So let's start with your personal budget. No doubt you've made savings during lockdown. Can these savings continue? And what we're trying to look at right now is the order about which you want to go into this business recovery planning. There's a natural order in which to reinvent your business, and with business continuity planning we ask you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. You've probably heard me say this all over social media, but it's really, really important we think about how we're going to look after ourselves before we go ahead to help each other. Business recovery planning is no different from that continuity planning. Remember that the business is there to serve you, not the other way around. You shouldn't be a slave to your business. And very often as business owners, we sort of fall into this trap, and it really is a trap, of doing everything to think about our business first, but forgetting about the importance of putting us at the start of this recovery planning process. So step one, put your shareholder or your owner hat on and define what you need to get from the business. Can you make savings in your personal spending to reduce the cash flow strain on the business? No doubt you've made these savings during the lockdown, so how can you continue? Updating your personal budget is best done using a template so that you don't miss any expenses. An easy way to do it is to simply look at your bank statements online, see what you typically spend in a month, or alternatively, what you could do is use our planning template. And in your invitation to this webinar, you'll have seen a link to our Google Drive, and that holds a number of these templates absolutely free for you to download and to use in this process. So I'm just going to quickly show you an example of this one, which I made earlier. And the spreadsheet here that I filled in, you can just see the number of sections that we've got there. And it's just really a reminder to make sure you don't forget to fill in, I don't know, for example, how much you spend on the children, or where your money goes on your lifestyle spend, for example, debt repayments and that kind of thing. So you can use a template like this, or you can do something a little bit more simple. Once you've done your personal budget, you can build up your revised business budget. Many of you may have already done a business budget for the year, and it's likely this has really significantly changed over the past couple of months. We recommend what we call a bottom-up process. So you start with the increase in cash that you want to achieve for the year, and you take that from what's in your personal budget, and then you build it up from that point. And it's really important to start here, as many businesses have found that they didn't have a sufficient war chest of cash going into the lockdown. And this is probably the biggest problem that we've seen in our client base, and then other people that have come to talk to us, is they just said, we just didn't see this coming. And so we didn't have enough put away in the savings account to get us through that first little patch. Very, very lucky in this country that the government has created certain ways to help us, and we've had the business bounce back loan and the CBILS loans, but the cash war chest just wasn't there for a lot of businesses, partly because we've not been through a really tough patch in the economy for a little while. So perhaps some of us, and I'll put my hand up on this one, have got just a little bit too relaxed about the fact that money's quite easy to come by, and now we're going to be hitting into a recession. So we really need to work on that war chest. This is not designed to be technical accountese here. I know there are some big scary words on the screen, and I'm really sorry about those. We just want to show you how you can take control back by going through a high level step-by-step process here. So if we start with the other cash movements, you may be able to free up cash by reducing debtors, stock, work in progress maybe, or by negotiating better terms with your suppliers. Where it says the loan principal, you need to allow for the capital repayments on existing finance that you've already got in place, and then any new finance that you're going to need to add into that budget. We'll look at asset purchases or sales. There may be new assets you need, or obsolete ones that you need to sell. You know, that might be machinery that you need in order to do something in your business right now. It may be other things like cars that you've got on finance. Next line up is drawings. Here's what you add in your personal budget from that previous slide that we looked at. So you take from that budget that you've written there and you plug in the drawings that you need in order to be able to facilitate your lifestyle. Net profit after tax, adding or subtracting these items gives you the target profit after tax that you need to be aiming for. The next thing to do is add in what the tax will be to get your required profit before tax. So you're working backwards here. So we start with how much do we want to take back, and then how much tax do we need to pay in order to get the gross profit figure. Then have a really careful look at your overheads to see if savings can be made there. Now you're going to have your gross profit that you need. Using your desired gross profit percentage, you can derive the sales level required to give you what you need from the business. And then it's all about reviewing these numbers and margins to ensure you can come up with a workable revised budget. Ideally from here, you'll then complete a more detailed forecast on a month-by-month basis, so you have a basis from which to track your progress. And if you're a Xero user, what's really great to do from this point is to pull that budget, use the budget manager in Xero. You can do that using a CSV template. So you can export from Xero a template of your chart of accounts, pop these monthly new budget figures in, and great functionality in Xero means that you can have multiple budgets at the same time. So this could be your COVID-19 recovery budget, for example, and you could leave your old budget in place, and then you can report against either one, whichever one seems more applicable at the time. And then you can just re-import that into Xero, and it's there for your reporting basis. So it's a really great way of using this information that you're gathering now and giving it some real world applications. And this is where having real-time digital reporting of your numbers is so important. So, for example, if you identified your sales total for the year needed to be, let's say, 500,000, that equates to about £10,500 a week if your business is open 48 weeks a year. You'll want to have a system for recording how you're going against that target. Likewise, if you have debtor terms of 7 days, so you ask your customers to pay you within 7 days, and they're currently taking 41 days to pay you on average, and you can see here in this slide, that's what's going on in this particular business that we're looking at. You'll want to measure if that number is improving month on month. Sorry, I'll just go back to that slide and finish up. So we really recommend you measure no more than about 5 of your most important numbers. We call these key performance indicators, or KPIs. It's a term you've probably heard quite a lot. Some examples are daily or weekly sales, gross profit by product or service, debtor days, increase or decrease in cash for the month. And you can see on this particular slide, these are the KPIs that are being targeted in this business. Once you've got KPIs and a budget, it's important to have these numbers loaded into your monthly reporting system so you can track your actual results to your budget. And we can help you with the most appropriate technology to use for your business, if that's in Xero or if that's in a different sort of system. This particular report you're seeing on the screen here is from Spotlight, and Spotlight is our preferred reporting tool. So when we find that we're not getting quite the picture that we want out of Xero, and that's Xero is fantastic at giving us numbers against numbers, but for so many of our clients, a pictorial image is much more effective, and we find it easier. You know, humans find images much easier to absorb than words and numbers. So, you know, a picture tells a thousand words is well known. When we look at the picture of this particular business on a monthly basis, it's really easy for us to quickly look at that chart and see what's going on over time and look at those trends. So if you need some help with getting those sorts of reports out, you want dashboards like this, that is something we would love to help you with. It's one of my favorite things to create this kind of information out of the data that we already hold for clients. Once you know at a high level what your budget is, it's time to look at the opportunities that exist to achieve that budget. Again, we recommend focusing on no more than about 5 key opportunities, otherwise it just gets a little bit too busy. And it's very nice to be able to just pick out these 5 different areas to really concentrate on through this process. Think of the ideas we talked about earlier to reinvent your business. Opportunities could also be things like working in more of an online way with your team or with your customers. You may no longer need the same premises, or you may need to redefine the roles in your business. There may be new lines of revenue to pursue, or other businesses that you could acquire. Other opportunities might be around the adoption of technology or systems to improve your efficiency, or maybe change your online communication. You know, but in February, not all of us were spending most of our time on Zoom, and if you talk to everybody now, it's become a tool that is just ubiquitous. We see it everywhere. Taking the time to brainstorm all these opportunities to improve your business is really valuable, and it's so empowering. You need to leave no stone unturned here. Of course, the flip side of opportunity is your vulnerabilities. What are the 5 biggest vulnerabilities in your business right now? They could be things like poor cash flow, a sustained downturn in demand for your current products or your services, poor debtor management, people are taking a long time to pay you, or something like banking covenants that aren't being met. Naming the vulnerabilities enables you to make a plan to overcome them. Name so you can tame is a great mindset to have. And this can be quite an uncomfortable process to go through. So what I tend to suggest to clients is that they take their time over this and they choose their time as well. So if you're having a really difficult week, you may decide that actually sitting down and pulling apart the vulnerabilities in your business is just too painful. Try to do it when you've got lots of energy. So I tend to find that the morning is better than the afternoon for this kind of thing. Or sometimes it's the sort of thing that you can do in the evening with a glass of wine and say, I'm just going to spend 20-30 minutes on this, and then I'll come back and revisit again at a later date. And I've got some tools to help you do that. So you really do need to be brutally honest in your assessment of your vulnerabilities. A rosy plan for your financiers is not going to pass muster in these difficult times, and banks are expecting to see you tell the truth in this kind of thing. So when we're putting together these kind of risk assessments, we want it to be really well thought through and not to sort of gloss over anything. Once you've identified your 5 biggest opportunities and your 5 vulnerabilities, you need to identify your 2 to 3 most critical challenges. These might be things like deciding whether or not to sell or liquidate part of the business, or establishing an online sales platform, or securing sufficient finance to trade through the next 3 months. It's that type of thing. We strongly recommend that you do a careful analysis of all the risks in your business. The best way to do this is to complete a risk register, which assesses the likelihood of each risk and then the consequences for your business if that risk is not mitigated. And risks fall into the following 10 categories. So we've got governance. Governance risks are things like poor planning, lack of up-to-date policies, poor discipline around working on the business. And I think right now this is a really big risk for lots of owners. We've many of us, if you're anything like me, have been really in the business, doing a lot of delivery and helping customers right at the coalface. And what happens when you spend lots of time doing that is you tend to not have enough energy to step back and do some more of the governance work. So things like monthly management accounts meetings often just sort of slip. People forget to sit down and do some of that work. So there's definitely a risk around governance. Leadership. So leadership risks would be something like lack of communication with the staff, forgetting to do your reporting to them. The staff morale in your business may be dropping off because they're not having the contact that they're used to having. I'm seeing lots of businesses being really, really good at finding ways to mitigate against this. You know, daily stand-ups or huddles, tea breaks, which is what we do. So we have a 10:30 in the morning tea break with the team so that everybody has an opportunity to talk to each other every day. It's those kind of things that you can use to mitigate this sort of risk. We've got products and services risks. So this is risks around lack of adaptation or innovation in the business. That might be something like you've got a product that you can only deliver face-to-face, and that's just not really appropriate right now. It might not be for a few more weeks. We've got operational risks. So this is risks around suppliers in your supply chain. So perhaps the risk isn't sitting right in your business at the moment, but it's in your supplier's business. So there's something that they can't do and it's going to affect the supply coming on to you. I was in a meeting this morning with a client who said, can't get hold of nails for his nail gun. And, you know, he's trying to get a fence put up. It's not a problem that he's got in his business, but it's a problem that they've got in their supply chain, and it's stopping other things from continuing in their business. So making sure that we're really aware of what's going on in our supply chain and where those risks are there. Marketing. So marketing risks might include a poor return on investment, overspending perhaps in your marketing, but just as much having a lack of digital presence. So spending in the wrong places. That might be perhaps spending lots of money on poster advertising, for example, right now, when actually people aren't out and about in the same way. They really ought to be switching around to something like Facebook advertising. So just making sure that your marketing is hitting the right spot. The next risk we talk about is a sales risk, the need to adapt to e-commerce, online selling, or risks around poorly training your staff or perhaps overselling in these kind of difficult times. So we've definitely seen these kind of things being tricky for people who bake and sell their goods online. So I buy some online brownies that get delivered through the post. Really fantastic, very, very tasty. I'll give you the link if anyone wants to know it. It's somebody local. And the problem that they've got is that they just can't keep up with demand. So they need to be able to say, that's how much we can supply, and then we have to stop. And I've seen people closing down their websites at 12 noon because they don't have the space to add things in later on in the day. Just making sure that they're not over trading. Finance risks. Yeah, these are ones obviously that are close to my heart. They're obviously the things I'm looking at for all the time, but finance risks are things like undercapitalization, not having enough capital in order to trade through a tricky period. So that's going to have an impact on cash flow, poor financing structures, so maybe borrowing from places that are very expensive when there would be a better way to restructure that financing. And that sometimes comes about because a company's not being very careful about forward planning and knowing when they're going to need finance. Perhaps poor credit control or debtor management, so not keeping on top of those people that owe you money, not having a good system in place for how to do that. Poor reporting or lack of forecasting, not knowing what's coming around the corner, not knowing when that hole in your income is going to be coming. One of the key points I've got around this is that I'm seeing lots of businesses who've got their bounce back loan, or maybe a CBILS loan. So there's actually cash in the bank right now, and they're sort of sitting back into that and enjoying having a bit of flexibility around where their money needs to be at what time. But what we really need to keep our eye on is what's going to happen at the beginning of 2021. It's a real concern for me is that we've put off paying VAT for many companies. People haven't paid their payments on account on their personal tax, and they've probably not been paying their corporation tax either. So we're going to suddenly hit a period, first 3 months of 2021, when self-assessment returns are going to come in, and we're going to have tax and payments on account which need to be paid alongside VAT bills and corporation tax. It's going to be a right crunch point when the bounce back loans need to begin their repayments as well. That's going to be probably April, May time next year. And suddenly cash flow is going to become very, very tricky for certain businesses if they haven't planned for that coming up in the future. So HR risks, what might this be? Overspending on staff, poorly managed restructuring. This is definitely a hot topic for this month. So people are talking about redundancies coming up, thinking about what happens as we step out of current furlough systems into flexible furlough, and then when furlough comes to an end in October. And if we're not carefully restructuring, that could cost you thousands of pounds. If you get any of that stuff wrong, if you don't follow the correct redundancy processes, or you're making people redundant in a way that is going to create a tribunal situation, there are thousands of pounds to be wasted around that. So making sure that you don't create risk around the way you're treating your staff, and dealing with grievances correctly, being understanding as to what's going on in people's personal lives if they're working from home, making sure that you're managing remote working correctly. I think for most people with staff, this is definitely a high risk area. Admin risks. So this could be something like a lack of automation, having tasks that just used to be done in a certain way and it's no longer appropriate. So looking for ways to mitigate the risk around that in your business. And number 10 is technology. So poor adaptation of software, using the wrong software for the wrong sorts of jobs, having tools that are perhaps desktop based when you really need them to be cloud based, when you're working away. So looking at how to mitigate the risks around technology would be the last bit on that list. So once you've identified these risks, you need to pull everything together into a cohesive plan with goals, actions, and responsibilities. And you'll find in that drive that I'll share the link to again for you. We've got a risk register that you can use. Again, a free template. Download it. Use it in your business. It doesn't really matter how big your business is. If it's one person or if it's 100 people in your business, there's still space for a risk register. It really helps you to focus your mind and work out what's going on there. So once you've got that pulled together, we're going to have goals, actions, and responsibilities that we want to get into this plan, this recovery plan. Your business recovery plan is much more detailed than your normal business plan, in that you get right down into the nitty-gritty for each department of the business. Goals need to be SMART, and all actions need to be assigned to someone responsible for them. These goals and actions should be updated regularly through some form of regular review process. At this time, we'd recommend something like a monthly review for at least the next 6 months, so up until the end of 2020, and then maybe a change over to quarterly after that, depending on what happens over the next couple of quarters. And that kind of a review process makes sure that they stay fresh in your mind, and that it isn't just a document that gets put in the drawer and forgotten about. It's actually a working tool for you in your business. Let's take a closer look at how to pull all of this together now as a complete package. So depending on your circumstances, your package should include your personal budget, template in the drive, your risk register, again, template in the drive, your business recovery plan, which we're going to talk about right now, a business forecast, an updated organisation chart if you've got a team of people, and if you're applying for finance, you might also need a finance application. Quite a lot of documents there, and it could make a very useful pack for you. You might not need to do all of this work at the same time. For example, you may have sufficient cash flow now, so you don't need to apply for finance, or you've already applied for finance and it was a bounce back loan, so there was no requirement for you to provide documentation. Or alternatively, you did a CBILS application, you've probably already got your cash flow forecast together, so you've got that ready to put into your pack. Likewise, if you don't have a team, you may not feel the need to have an updated organisation chart. Although I will tell you, when I first started my business and it was just me and my business, I did have an org chart, and it was my name in all of the boxes, but it really helped me to understand all of the different departments that I was responsible for. And then as I brought staff on, I could move them into that org chart. We have another webinar that we do, and also a workshop for clients or for non-clients. We're happy to work with either, called the 10 Hats, and it helps you to work out what those departments are in your businesses and who should be doing what within that structure. It helps you to really build out how that org chart should look for your specific business. What's important right now is that you establish what is right for you. What combination of these do you need and who will do them? And if you've got our workbook open, this is a really good time just to stop and have a quick think about that. Jot down a couple of notes about which things you do need and who is going to do them, and perhaps even pop a little time frame around that as well. So here is our plan, and I'm going to share with you this demo plan that we've got. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail in the plan so that you can really understand what it would look like and how we go about putting it together in order that you can do the same thing for yourselves. So this plan is for a company called Buzz Electrical. It's a contracting company. It's got a year end 31st of March 2021, and you can see that what we've done is we've written the executive summary here already. Now, when I write a plan, or when I help a client to write a plan, we come to the executive summary from their pre-work. So when we work with clients and other business owners, before we sit down to do a workshop or a seminar like this, we always send them some pre-work. We ask some quite searching questions actually before we start, so that we can gather thoughts together. And then when we're working together, we're not spending time trying to dig down to get information from them. We've already got that ready to go. So this executive summary, what I would do is write a sort of skeleton executive summary, go through all the other parts of the plan, and then I come back to it and finesse it at the end once I've worked out perhaps what my KPIs are and things like that. So in this particular circumstance, we've got this company, it's had a big downturn, domestic division of the business hasn't happened at all. Couldn't go into houses to do any electrical work, so there hasn't been any domestic work being done, but the commercial side of the company's done really well. And so cash flow problems have come about because the domestic customers haven't been there, and they've been very slow to pay when they had been. So there's no income coming from that side, and 80% of the wages have been paid because they've furloughed all the team in the domestic side. So these guys need some system improvements, and they need to do a viability study on the domestic division to see if it's worth continuing, or if perhaps they should actually sell it off to a competitor or shut it down. So there are some things there to look at. So the next part of the plan is to look at what the business owner's monthly personal spend needs to be. So that's using that first template that we showed you, which is the personal budget. So they need £4,000 over the current year. In 3 years' time, they want it to be higher, want £5,000 a month out. And then underneath that, we can see what the annual spending is, what the roles are of those business owners, and what hours they are currently working, and what they'd like to be working in 3 years' time. And that's a really helpful way of looking at some of the non-financial goals for the business owners. So, you know, I'm an accountant, I talk finance, but it's really important to also understand what is it that we're trying to get from our business that doesn't fit into what the bottom line numbers are. And for many business owners, this is especially coming out of having this lockdown period. Lots of people are saying to me, actually what I really want is to be able to take the kids to school in the morning, or to be at home in time to walk the dogs with the whole family. So build that into your plan. It's really, really important that we recognise that alongside what figures we want to be taking home. It's getting the rest of the balance right. So then we work through into what new finance is needed. So do we need a new loan in this business? So in this particular business, if we want to acquire another business, yes. So they're looking at acquiring this business called Strongman Engineering. And so they may need a new loan at that point. Do they need an overdraft extension? What new finance are we talking about? And what sort of security is there? So we've got a bit about the business owners and what's the finance that we need. We've then got the budget that we showed you on that second slide after the personal budget. This is the business budget. So we're reading it now top down, but this was built up from the bottom up. Do you remember? We started from what we needed to take home, and then we worked out what we needed that gross revenue to be. So this has been worked on that same basis. So they need to have a gross budget, a gross revenue of £655,000, which will give them a profit of 164,000, and that's a profit margin of 25%. So they've worked that back to make sure that those margins are possible to make. And then we have a quick look at what the overheads are from that budget information. And then we find out what our net profit before tax would be. So coming on to the next page of that plan, we then say how much tax would you need to pay on that amount of income. So it's £8,000 of tax. So the net profit is going to be £42,500. Does that cover the drawings that we need? We then look at what asset purchases we might need to make. What in fact, in this business, they're going to sell some assets in order to get £20,000 back into the business for cash flow. They're going to borrow £25,000. Sorry, they're going to repay £25,000 of their borrowing, and that's going to bring us down to a cash increase in the business over that year of £10,000. So that's all been worked through in that budget sheet. The next bit we really want to focus on are those KPIs. So what are the critical KPIs? So we've gone through what those risks are in the business. We've looked at the opportunities, and out of that we've pulled out what are the things we need to measure to make sure that we're going to hit the targets that we're looking for. So in this business, they want to get their debtor days to be below 45 days, and the stock days, that's how long it takes to do the stock churn. And you might have seen that on one of my other webinars, but if not, again, ask us about that stock churn and we can share that quick model with you. So we want stock churn to be under 45 days, gross profit margin 25% or above, and that means that the minimum weekly sales needs to be £15,000 a week. And it's really nice to have one of those weekly sales targets. It helps everybody in the business to know when they can ring the bell, when they've hit what the business needs to do in order to provide all of the things that the business owner is looking for. And nice to see on there a non-financial metric. Board meetings need to be held monthly, so that covers out that governance risk, and it's an easy one just to tick off to make sure that that is happening on a monthly basis. We identify the opportunities here in the plan. So the opportunities for this business is to grow their industrial side of the business, restructure on the residential or the domestic division, review the costs. It's nice to see that as an opportunity. Lots of people forget that there are opportunities when you're reviewing costs to cut down your overheads. They've got an opportunity to buy a competitor, and another opportunity is to improve their financial systems and their technology. So taken out of the risk, they've worked out how to find an opportunity in there. So what comes alongside the opportunities is the vulnerabilities. So what are the vulnerabilities here? We've got cash flow is probably a vulnerability for nearly all of us business owners at the moment. There's definitely some things to mitigate around there. So they're saying, so perhaps we'll increase our overdraft limit just to get us through this patch. The losses over on the domestic side, maybe we'll close it down. We've got some weaknesses in the admin and the finance areas. We've got some poor planning, so we need to have those structured meetings. And they've pulled out here, there's low morale. Half of the team have worked really hard, while the other half have been on holiday receiving 80% of their pay. And if you've got a business where you've got some of your staff furloughed and some of them not, this is probably a vulnerability that you're managing right now, alongside the vulnerability of how do we integrate those people that have been on furlough back into the team, and to wean them off what has probably been a time that's felt quite comfortable. 80% of your pay, no work, it sounds okay. So finding a way to mitigate that risk in your business. The most critical challenges they've pulled out: deciding what to do about the residential division and fixing the cash flow so the business can trade through the next 3 months comfortably. So you can really see how those thought processes pull together so they can just pull out what those critical challenges are and really focus the mind of the business owners here to ensure that they're not letting any of this stuff slip. So what we then do in our plan is we break it down into those 10 hat departments. So here we've got governance, leadership, product development, and I'll show you the others in just a second. We've got HR on this page as well. So if I just pick out a couple of these just to run through with you, to give you a sort of example of how you would do this in your own business. So let's start with the governance department. So the risks there is board reporting. Is it sufficient and timely to review the overall business performance? Annual goals, they should be best practice governance. And then you break that down into 90-day goals. So over the next quarter, we're going to get board meetings held monthly with reporting in the risk register starting from June 2020. So really nice SMART goals. We know what they are, they're timed, so we know what the time boundary is around them, and you'll know if you've done it or not. And from those goals, we then pull out to some actions. So it's great to have the goals, so you then need to know what has to be done in order to meet the goals. So we've got seek funding for this from RBPN, so it's a funding portal. If it's not funded, add to finance application to the bank, implement the GAP CAs, and I can share what that is. The GAP is the portal that we use to help to implement some of these governance ideas, and use those recommendations for best practice. And then we've got over on the who and the by when, who's going to do it, so we know who's responsible and what the timing is on that, so they can tick it off on their list. You might also have, for example, HR risks, workplace culture, trying to get that restored after people return from furlough. How are we going to do that? We're going to revise the finance and the admin job descriptions, get the KPIs signed off, have performance reviews and goal setting. Results in a high level of team satisfaction. So we've got those all ready to go. And then the 90-day actions would be get a job description template, draft the revised job descriptions, put in some KPIs, meet to negotiate and sign off with the staff. And we can see who's going to do all of those things. So there's a couple of ways that these would break down into actual actions that you can take straight off the back of the plan. The other 5 departments that were that are in the list. So we've got marketing, sales, operations, finance, and admin. So let's just pull out, you know, I like finance. Let's pull out the finance one. So what are we looking at? We need to have sufficient cash flow to trade through the next 3 months. The annual goal is to have free cash flow of at least £50,000 available at all times. So if you remember right when I started talking, it was about that war chest. So really nice to know what the war chest needs to look like. So if you break your annual goal down into 90-day goals, it would be to have £25,000 of available cash flow right now. How are we going to do that? So we're going to engage an outsourced credit manager. So that would be somebody to collect your debts for you. And as an aside, if you're in that kind of position and you need somebody to help you with collecting debts, cash flow management, we work alongside some really great companies that do that. Nikki Kinton is who I would advise you to talk to, and she's a specialist at doing exactly this alongside reviewing your terms and conditions to make sure that they are working for you as well. So if you need that kind of connection, just give us a shout and we can put you in contact with Nikki. Arranging a short-term overdraft extension. So for example, with that one, we can see Buzz has got to do that by the end of this month. So when we finished putting this plan together and we've shared it, Buzz is going to get on the phone to the bank and go and sort out that overdraft. So you can see how it also spreads some of the responsibility for getting these things done. And many business owners are probably feeling quite a lot of the weight of this on their shoulders right now. A lovely thing about having a plan: share it with your staff, share it with your support team, you know, even if they're contractors, not members of staff. You can just allocate some of these tasks out and share that burden around so that everybody's working towards the same goals in the business. So I've given you a whistle-stop tour of that plan. Obviously, we'd spend quite a lot of time together doing that if you were going to work alongside us with that. I hope I haven't gone into so much technical detail that it's sort of making your head buzz. My goal's been to share with you what business recovery planning is all about and how you would do it. And hopefully I've got that across to you. So next steps. What are your next steps from here? The first thing I want to be really clear with you is doing nothing here is not an option for you. It may feel you've got a little bit of a lull, it's a little bit quiet perhaps in your business. Now is the perfect time to be doing recovery planning. The one thing you can't do is nothing. So we're entering into a period of business as not normal. It's nothing that we've really seen before. We can't rely on what used to happen. Doing what you've always done in the past is unlikely to give you the same results as you've had back then. So we've got to be really careful to not let ourselves slip into not thinking about the future from this position. You've got to put your oxygen mask on yourself first. It's so important to remember this. The more sustainable you can make your business right now, the better it is for everyone. I don't know if you guys can see just behind me, it's one of our core values here at Panthera is to build sustainable businesses. And sustainability is really at the core of this planning, is to make sure that your business not only is sustainable over the next 6 months, 12 months, but it's also to make sure that if this happens again, and there's nothing to say we won't have another lockdown or we won't have a second wave, it's that you're in a really strong position as you enter into that kind of problem to be sustainable, to be able to get through this time and to make it out of the other side. The third thing you've got to do is make a plan. You've got to have a plan to get through these challenging times. It's the only way to keep your sanity, really. The next thing is focusing on what you can do as opposed to worrying about what might happen in the future. I definitely think we've had a period of the last few weeks particularly where some of the positivity in the business community seems to have dropped out a little bit. People have perhaps been focusing on some really tricky things that are happening out there in the wider world. But worrying about what you're not able to have any influence on is just a waste of your time and energy right now. What you really got to do is focus on the positive side, focus on what you can do, and often we find it very difficult to see the wood from the trees at this kind of period. So writing out a plan like this and just taking it in chunks makes it so much easier. Get help from us. We're here to help you. We help clients, we help non-clients. We're really happy to do one of our free 15-minute calls with anybody that's struggling right now. My aim and the aim of the whole team is to make sure that we don't have a single client that falls through the gaps during this period, but also to make sure that people don't just survive it, but they really thrive and they come out of the other side with a stronger, more sustainable business than how they went into this crisis. So ask for help, you know, and it's not only Panthera. There are lots and lots of very knowledgeable and helpful people out there in our business ecosystem who are so happy to give you help, to listen to what you're worrying about, to point you in the right direction, to give you advice. And they're doing that all over LinkedIn, Facebook, within business groups like BBB Success Groups is something that I'm a member of, and they're super helpful at just making sure that we're pooling our knowledge and pulling each other through this. And I feel really strongly that as business owners, we're only going to come out of this crisis well if we do it together. So, you know, I'm happy to share information with other accountants. We're all sort of supporting one another. I don't think it's really relevant anymore to see the people in your industry as your competitors. We really need to be supporting one another. So remember that there's help from us, but help from other people out there as well. Oh, sorry, I've gone one too far. So how can we help you? Our recommended strategy is to complete a business recovery plan. You can see I'm enthusiastic about them, and we really know that they work. We've been receiving really great feedback about how great that process is. So if you haven't yet done your business recovery plan, now is the time to do that. It's going to form a great foundation from which to build your cash flow improvement strategy. It's also going to help if you've got loan applications that you want to make, but it's going to also just make it easier to run your business over the next 6 to 12 months. So we've got some options for you. Options to complete the plan are, number one, you can meet with us online, so we can do this together. And we either do that as a single session of up to 4 hours, or if that sounds just a bit too intense, you can do 2 2-hour sessions. And it just depends on the sort of concentration levels that you might have, what you find to work for you. We send an in-depth pre-work to complete, so you've got time to consider the impact of COVID-19 on each department of your business. And then we use that completed pre-work to guide us through the plan and set goals for each of those departments, just like that plan that we've shown you. It ensures you've got a detailed and well thought out plan, and it gives your business the best chance of recovery. The second option is to meet with us online for the business recovery planning session, and then we'll work with you to prepare an updated cash flow forecast and a finance application. So if you're needing that kind of extra support, that's available to you as well. Our third option is a completely complimentary business recovery review. So with this, we send you a business recovery action list. It's like a very scaled down version of that bigger plan that we showed you. You complete that yourselves, and then you send it back to us, and we spend about 15 minutes with you, just giving you a review of what's in there and helping you to build your next steps. Absolutely free. This option suits those of you who may have a small business that doesn't feel like it needs a comprehensive business recovery plan. And once you've completed the action plan, we do the 15-minute call for the review. We give you some next steps. And the risk there is that you may find that you're really, really busy and you think you're going to do it, and then you don't. And we find a few people get started on this process and then never quite complete it. And so when you don't have us working alongside you to be that accountability partner, sometimes that's the risk with this option, but it's absolutely there for you. And we're really, really happy to share that action plan with you and to help you get through that list. The fourth one, if you're unsure on the best way to go forward, you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of this, or you just want to have a talk about how we could work together, we recommend complimentary meeting. We can discuss your goals, your current problems and your challenges, and then we can agree the best way that we could go forward to support you. You can see the prices are up there on the screen. You can see that we've discounted everything by half, and we've been doing that through this particular period with continuity planning and business recovery planning, because we know how important it is for small businesses to get through this period. And as I said before, I think the only way we do it is to do it together. So if you do feel that you're in need of this stuff, but you don't have the funds available to be able to pay for it, you've got that half price option for you up on the screen. If you're going to need to obtain business funding, if you haven't got that already and you're still trying to get hold of that, we think it's vital that you prepare a cash flow forecast. I say this very strongly. I think it's so important that every business has a cash flow forecast. You've got to know when the money runs out. It's really important, even more so if you're going for funding, and absolutely imperative if you've already had a bounce back loan but you haven't put in place a cash flow forecast. There is that hole that, you know, we were so pleased that bounce back loans were easy for the majority of people to get hold of. I know some people find this process very, very painful. So I know it's not everybody's experience, but in the whole, people did find those funds very easy to get hold of, and they didn't need to prepare a cash flow forecast in order to get it. Great, it meant it was fast. It's caused us a real worry that certain people will have spent all of that money by now and have no idea how they're going to pay it back this time next year. So a cash flow forecast at that point is really, really important for you to know how you're going to come out at the other end of this process. You're going to have to repay these loans, and you're going to have to generate enough profit to convert that into cash in order to make those repayments. You can't do that without a plan. We know it's difficult to commit to spending money right now. We've got different payment options available, so don't let cost be a barrier. Get in touch and we can work together to come to an arrangement that's going to work for you and your business. We know that the benefits you get from these services are far greater than our fee. Most importantly, it's about helping you as quickly as possible and ensuring we're working with you to build a stronger and more resilient and sustainable business. So I've probably spoken for long enough. Has anybody got any questions? I'm just going to ask Richard, have you seen any questions pop up in the panel or in the Q&A that need to be answered?
So we have two. Just a reminder for anyone, if you click the Q&A button, you can submit your question there. But I'll give you the first one. So I love the idea of a business recovery plan, but I'm flat out with work right now. How do I free up capacity to do this work?
Yeah. Okay. So so we often talk about the achiever matrix with 4 quadrants, and we say start with what is not urgent and not important, which is the quadrant of waste. If you're anything like me, you've got quite a lot of things that fall into this task. So it's like the task list of I don't know, there may be some things on your desk that don't have a deadline, that's due for a little while, but they're fun. You know, the sort of playing around with PDFs, making things look pretty, those kind of tasks. So you need to get rid of those. You need to either outsource them, hand them over to somebody else, just take them off your list. Then you need to look for what you can delegate or outsource. So perhaps you're spending time doing your bank reconciliations and you're a business owner. That's not a great use of your time. Use somebody in your admin team, ask your accountants, ask people like us to do it for you, get yourself a bookkeeper so you can get those tasks off your desk. And then you need to be disciplined about putting time into what's important but not urgent, as this is going to save you time in the future. And this is something I find lots of business owners really struggle to do. We tend to be so focused on the urgent stuff that we forget about the not urgent stuff. One of the recommendations I have for this is to pick a time of the day on a specific week to be put aside for doing this kind of work, because if you don't put it into your diary, it's not going to happen. Again, I'd suggest a morning. It's when brains tend to be fresher. Depending if you're a morning person, you might find that a slot in the afternoon is going to work for you to do this, but you need to put aside some time. It's part of that governance duty that you've got. If you're a director of a limited company, it's a legal duty that you have to run your business properly. So you need to really focus on how important that is. It might not feel urgent, but it is important. I appreciate it's really hard to do this when you've got urgent and important work to deal with right now. That's why we want to help you and have created these resources to get you started. So if you think that you've not got time to do this, stick something in the diary for next week, come back to our drive, download that personal budget and the risk register, and give yourself, even if you say I'm going to spend 30 minutes on this task, just get started. That's really the best bit of advice I can give you, is just to get going on it. What else have you got, Richard?
So the second question is, I'm concerned I can't afford to do this work. What can you suggest?
Okay, so yeah, there are lots and lots of options. So talk to us is what I suggest first up. It may be that the getting the work done, the plan done, is what's holding you back from getting your funding. So you can't get your CBILS funding through until you've done the work. So you're going to have to find a way of just switching that around. Now, if that's the case, talk to us about it, because we can always defer your payments. So we could do your business plan, get your CBILS through, and then get your payment from the CBILS when it comes through. I think doing this kind of work, you'll be amazed at how quickly, even just doing a quick review of your overheads, how quickly we can find that fee just by cutting out 3 or 4 costs that shouldn't be there, or helping you to plan a way to change your sales strategy, for example. So there are definitely ways that we can help with that. We can also split fees over a period. If you are a client of ours and you're already on a monthly billing process, we could then split it over a number of your months of billing. So there are lots of options on how we can help you do that. You know, if the fact is that you haven't done your bounce back loan yet, it may be as simple as get your bounce back loan and use that to invest in planning for the future. It's some of the best investment you can ever make, is making sure that you've got that ready to go. So, you know, if you've got some money sitting aside from a bounce back loan in your deposit account, possibly, then that's the sort of thing that I think you should be absolutely focusing on spending on right now. Right. Anything else that's popped up since we started talking, Richard?
No, just those two.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, one's just come in. Sorry.
Yeah, do.
You're going to send the link for the Google Drive, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you would have had it in the original login for the webinar, but I will also send it out in our follow-up email. So we'll do a follow-up email. We'll send you the link and make sure that you've got access to all of those things.
Great.
So thank you so much for making the time to attend our webinar. We really appreciate, time is very valuable right now, and we hope we've given you plenty of ideas to think about and some really clear options for how we can support you. Before we go, I thought I'd share this quote with you. It's one of my favourites. I studied philosophy at university, so Socrates is close to my heart. Secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Don't spend time looking backwards. Right now is a really good time to think about how we're going to build this new. It's not going to look like normal. It's not going to look like anything we've seen before, probably. Whatever you can do to really focus on building the new and leaving the past behind us is where we should be as business owners right now. Make a simple plan today. So if you've got that workbook in front of you, I'd love it if you just wrote down a couple of things that you're going to do off the back of this webinar that you're committing to right now. Commit to, let's say, 3 actions that you'll take as a result of being here today. It's what makes coming on a webinar have any impact, is taking away some tasks. Write them down. If you want to share them in the Q&A, that would be fantastic. Send them over to me. I'd love to see them. You can find me Tori Wag over on LinkedIn, or you can hit me up on Twitter if you're over on there. So I'm at Panthera Accounting, Panthera ACC. Share them, and I will very happily hold you accountable to anything that you do share if that's what you need, or just cheerlead from the side if that's what you're after. I know it's a worrying time for many businesses. You do not need to worry alone. There is a ton of support out there. It's coming from us, but coming from other business owners as well. And there's so much more to come, and we are here to support you. So thank you for attending. Thank you for participating. Thanks for sharing your questions. Don't forget there is a feedback questionnaire as soon as you leave the meeting. So please fill that in for us. It really helps us. And off the back of that feedback, we then build the rest of our webinar content. So if there's something specific that you really feel we could help you with, we would love to hear about it. We will definitely take it into consideration. We'll put together some webinars or some other live content that might suit you. And thank you. So Vicky, Richard, thanks so much for helping me out, and we hope to see everybody on another one of our webinars very soon.
Great, thanks Tori.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.